What you manifest in your mind, you can bring to reality.
DVDASA, also known as double vag, double anal, sensitive artist, or DVD being David and ASA being Asa, podcast hosted by David Choe and Asa Akira. Asa Akira, porn star, David Choe, famous artist, wealthy artist. Decided to do a podcast because everybody was doing a podcast, so he did it in his own way. Now, this being the David Choe who made millions selling his art, made millions gambling, and then on top of that, got stock options to paint the Facebook offices, and Facebook is apparently worth a lot. So, pretty much unlimited money, I guess, is where he's coming from. So he can kind of do whatever he wants. This is a long format show, right? Which is kind of my favorite kind of long format. Way more of an ensemble cast. It was usually, I mean, as far as podcasts go, it had some of the largest amounts of guests on it than any podcast. They had a lot of people. David Choe, Asa Akira, Critter, Bobby Trivia, Money Mark showed up later. Heather Leather showed up later. Valentine was Custodian, who became a regular on the show. Pooner, who's Asa's personal driver, became a regular on the show. Yoshi Obayashi was a standard on the show for a good amount of time before he got fired. And then Steve Lee, I think he may have filled in after that. Steve Lee, Bobby Lee's brother, Bobby Lee, also Kalila, the host of Tiger Belly. This is where I first definitely heard of Kalila. And this is where I also fell in love with Bobby. And, now I'm a huge fan of Tiger Belly, which is kind of one of the spin-off shows of DVDASA, now that DVDASA is no longer. But it was a long format show. It was audio and video. It was one of those shows that I watched the video version of. I was a huge fan of how it was filmed. Early studio for him was just, you'd have like a few cameras. Tiger Belly's filmed in a very similar way where the screen will be split up into 3 sections or 4 sections. I think 4 for DVD ASA, at least later on, where they would have a wide shot on the top and then they would have a couple close-up shots. So it's almost like a security camera feed, but you get all the shots, or like a production studio feed where you're looking at all the camera views simultaneously, which is kind of a nice thing for podcasting instead of doing cuts like a Joe Rogan Experience or Your Mom's House, where they will actually make cuts either live or in post. This one just showed you all camera angles, static throughout the show. So very similar to Tiger Belly. And it was just decorated with knickknacks and everything. The Inspired Disorder podcast, even before Denver, but during Denver, I wanted to decorate the studio in a similar way that DVDASA. Later on, he would go to, I think he changed the studio a few times, but one of them, the last one, was a padded room, and they had wireless mics, and they all wore white, and they would go in this padded room and just chill out and talk. It was crazy. I mean, they're great podcasts also, but David Choe is a fucking crazy person, right? He's the mentality that you have to be an artist to begin with, but also to be successful somehow in an endeavor that's very difficult to be successful in. You have to have certain qualities, and he has a no give up quality. He references the scene in Gattaca all the time where the weaker brother mentions to the older brother on why he was always able to win was because he left it all. When he was swimming out to a buoy, he left it all there. He never planned, never saved anything for the swim back, which doesn't mean anything to most people if you haven't seen Gattaca or if you haven't listened to DVDASA. Also, he did some ranch files, I think they're called, where it's just him giving advice and giving his philosophy and work ethic on things, which I highly recommend listening to. But I was a huge fan of this show. Definitely out of my lifetime of listening to watching a podcast for over a decade now, DVDASA, one of the most original podcasts, one of the better produced podcasts, one of the most originally produced podcasts, but just one of the most entertaining, like fearless. They did not care. He ended up having to, they would record them in big chunks where they would just take a day and just record for like 12 hours, do, multiple 3-hour podcasts, and then just bank them and release them with a huge delay. Just David Choe would say some ridiculous shit. I think one of the last things that he said, he told a story where he lied about forcing a masseuse to give him a blowjob, which is rape. But he was just fucking around. Like, if you listen to the show, if you're a fan of the show, then you expect extremely ridiculous and offensive shit to be said. Like, it was on purpose so many times for him to just say things to be offensive. And it's just too much. He didn't need the drama, so he got out of it. And then he's had a lot of problems. David Choe has with gambling. He's a lot of addictions, a lot of problems. David Chang, which was one of his regular guests, the famous chef, cook, restaurant owner, Ugly Delicious, I think is the name of his Netflix show. He has a podcast also, David Chang, I forget Chan or Chang. But he has a podcast where he had David Choe on, and they kind of recap the insanity that was DVDASA in that time of his life. But I enjoyed the show so much. It later evolved into Mongchi, which is the band that David Choe is part of, with Steve Lee as the lead singer. Heather Leather plays bass, and Money Mark is the producer, who's also the producer for Beastie Boys. But they would have crazy guests on. They were just able to do so many insane things. It's a show that no one will ever match. No one will ever match. And I enjoyed thoroughly while it was around. You can still find it. There's ways, like I think Reddit, you could probably find links to download the entire series video. So if you want to go back, because a lot of them would get pulled down. Like they had to find very unique ways to distribute. And this was years ago. This is like 2012 when this podcast was going around. So it was very, very difficult to get pulled down for stuff compared to now, where it's like if you have ocean wave sound effects, certain companies that will spam your Instagram account and try and get it taken down. This is way before then. But yeah, it's one of those podcasts that I looked up to in a lot of ways, just from a creative standpoint, an artistic standpoint, as far as just not taking chances, being brave. There's something that Duncan Trussell has said to like Bert Kreischer and other people about podcasting, that if you're not taking chances with your podcast, then you're never going to grow. I mean, that's the same with anything. If you're not taking chances with your art, if you're not trying new shit and trying to evolve and push through wherever you're at now, then you're just going to become stale. And DVDASA was far from stale. Asa Akira was amazing. David Choe was amazing. I love that show so much. But yeah, that's my podcast breakdown for this episode. New episodes of this show come out every day. Subscribe everywhere podcasts are found in video and audio versions. Binge the show over at patreon.com/inspired disorder for members only. inspireddisorder.com for all of my work, my artwork, t-shirts like the one I'm wearing today. Save 50% by using coupon code THANKS18 when you check out. That's the number 18. Good through the end of the year. As a thank you from me to you, buy my work and everything for half off. Have a great day. No. At Ray Taylor for me on social media, of course. Have a great day, everybody. Peace out!